Welcome to the December Wisconsin Educational Technology Leaders webinar. During our 30 minutes together today, we are going to focus on the topic of cybersecurity during the upcoming holidays. Today's webinar is sponsored by WETL. If you are not a member of WETL, consider joining to maintain access to these great learning opportunities such as this one. My name is Amy Sturk, and I'm Instructional Technology Coordinator for the Green Bay Area Public School District, and I am joined by Ryan Cloutier. Ryan is a passionate cybersecurity thought leader who offers a creative approach to managing security, privacy, and risk. Ryan is the principal security architect at Sourcewell Technology and serves as a chairperson on the COSIN Cybersecurity Advisory Panel. Today, Ryan will lead us through a discussion about how to stay safe online with the upcoming holidays. So with that, Ryan, take it away.
Thanks, Amy. Really appreciate the time today. Thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar. Really excited to have this opportunity to give you a few tips that are going to come in really handy during this holiday shopping season. Well, before I get started with that, I want to share with you why I do this work and why I'm so passionate about working cybersecurity, specifically in the K-12 space. I firmly believe that as we move forward into 2019 and, oh gosh, here in just a couple of weeks, 2020, cybersecurity has never been more important as a foundational life skill. We all have digital lives that we lead. And pardon me, I'm recovering from a cold here. We all have these digital lives that we lead. And this is especially true in our schools and our classrooms. We're using digital technology to teach our kids. And a lot of us have a lot of digital technology in our homes. Maybe we have smart home devices, smart curling irons, smart speakers, various things. And as I'm sure a lot of us, as we go through our wish list for the holiday shopping, some of the things on that list are going to be some of these smart devices. So I want to give you a few holiday tips here on how to stay safe shopping online, but also in the store. So whenever you are shopping, or for that matter, doing any type of sensitive transaction, whether it be banking or healthcare, you really want to avoid the use of public Wi-Fi. The thing to understand about public Wi-Fi is that it's public. Therefore, anyone on that Wi-Fi connection can see everything going on that Wi-Fi connection. So while you think you're only on your computer when you're at the Caribou or Starbucks, your coffee place of choice, actually anyone else in that store or in that coffee shop can see what's going on your computer as well if they're on the same network. So a good rule of thumb is to just do not use public Wi-Fi for shopping or any sensitive activities. Another great tip is to look for the lock symbol on a website. So for example, if you're, and I'll pick on Amazon for a second because it's a very popular site that a lot of us shop at. If you're shopping on Amazon, you want to make sure that you're actually at the real Amazon website. And a couple ways to do that is to look up at the URL, so that address bar at the top, and make sure that it says Amazon.com, not that there's extra Z's in there, or maybe extra letters, or a dash, or a slash. If you see anything like that, it might not be the legitimate website. The other thing you're going to want to look for is a little lock symbol. And generally, that's going to be located on the left-hand side of that address bar I referred to earlier. What that lock tells you is that you have a secured connection between your computer and the computer that you are shopping with. So whether that's an Amazon computer, maybe it's eBay, Target.com, very popular in my household. These are the websites that we shop at, and we want to look for that lock symbol. And the reason we want to take this extra step to slow down is that during the holiday season, bad guys tend to increase their holiday shopping scams. A lot of times we will see faked websites that look very, very close to the real thing, but there's a little difference. Maybe that lock is missing. Maybe there's a hyphen in that address like I mentioned before. So we really want to make sure before we hand out any personal information, banking information, or complete a purchase, that we've checked to see the site we're doing business with is secure. Another really important thing to know is generally what your product should cost. Bad guys, again, will take advantage of you looking for a great deal. The rule of thumb that I follow is if the price seems too good to be true, it probably is. Most products are not going to be available for 75% off the retail price. 25%, maybe even up to 50%. But a lot of times we're not going to see a very popular thing have such a deep discount. So if the product you're buying is the cheapest that you can find it anywhere in the entire internet, chances are that it's either a scam or it potentially could be a counterfeit good. We want to be especially careful when it comes to products that we put in or on our bodies. For example, makeup is a very popular thing to buy this time of year. And unfortunately, some of those makeup sets out there are counterfeit and are full of poisons and toxins that we wouldn't want our children to be exposed to, or those that we care about. So know what the product should cost. And again, if the price is just so low that it seems ridiculous, it probably is. And you're going to want to go ahead and just avoid that. Another great thing that's recently become available to us to help stop fraud and scams are what we call one-time use credit cards. Most credit card companies now are willing and able to provide you with a single-use credit card number. And the reason for this is credit card fraud has become a bit rampant in the last couple of years, and Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, etc. They're tired of covering the fraud costs. So if you get a fraudulent charge, you call them, they say no problem, we remove it. Well, at the end of the day, somebody has to eat that cost, has to eat that lost money. And so they've come out with these one-time use credit cards, which are fabulous if you're going to buy from a site that maybe is less reputable or less trustworthy. I'll give you an example in my personal life. I like to blacksmith as a hobby. And one of the greatest places to buy blacksmithing tools is this little known company actually based in Wisconsin. And their website is, well, it's pretty basic. So for example, for me, if my wife was to purchase goods for me from that site, on the surface, the site looks like it might be a little sketchy, it might be a little suspicious. Now, I've gone ahead and called those folks, I verified that everything's real and it's legitimate, but if you don't have the time to do that, or maybe you can't find the number for them, using a one-time use credit card is going to protect you from any fraud that could occur. Because it's a one-time use card, like the name indicates, it's only good for that one time. So if a bad guy did get a hold of that credit card number, they would be unable to use it for any additional purchases. Another really important thing to remember is to keep your computer up to date. And that could include your cell phone, your tablet, laptop, anything that you're using to connect to the internet. You want to keep it updated. And the reason for this is the bad guys will take advantage of software flaws that exist in the web browser or in the phone's operating system or the computer's operating system. And while it's uncomfortable sometimes, or rather I should say inconvenient, to always be updating the apps in our phones. I know I probably get 2 to 3 requests a day to update something. And so we can become complacent and forget to do that. That's the #1 way in which the bad guys are able to get our personal information and are able to steal money from our accounts and our credit cards. So make sure that you update those. Also, if you're buying any tech, an important thing to do when you give that gift is remind the person who you're giving that gift to keep that device up to date. When it comes to offline shopping, and a lot of times we don't think about the risks that are present in offline shopping because we're physically in the store and therefore we feel more protected. And here what we're going to want to do is make sure that we're only using a credit card for purchases and not a debit card or an ATM card. And the big reason there is that debit cards and ATM cards are not protected by the same laws that a credit card is. If you have a fraudulent transaction that you want to dispute, if it is a credit card, the law requires the credit card company at their expense to allow you to dispute that. They then have to investigate it. And ultimately, the financial liability and responsibility is on the credit card company. A debit card or ATM card, as far as the law is concerned, is just like cash. And so if you have any issues with it, that's between you and your bank. If you've got a great bank like I do, they'll work with you and give you a temporary loan to cover that fraud amount until they complete their investigation. However, if they're not able to 100% prove that it was fraud, you're now out not only the money that you lost from the fraud, but you're also out the money the bank loaned you. And generally they loaned it at a pretty aggressive interest rate. I want to say it was like 26 point something percent. So always use a credit card for those purchases if you can. If you're unable to use a credit card, or maybe you're not comfortable using a credit card, I would then encourage you to purchase a gift card in store with cash and then use that gift card for any other transactions that you want to do. This is a big one. Do not leave your purchases in the car unattended. You just got done doing a lot of shopping. Most of us are running around a shopping center. Maybe we're hitting 5, 10, 15 different stores in a single night of shopping as we're all very busy and trying to get this stuff done in the next couple of weeks. We can sometimes forget that leaving those goods that we just bought sitting in the back seat invites a criminal to want to break into our car and steal them. So just like you see in parking ramps, lock it, hide it, take it. The same is going to be true for your holiday purchases. Lock them up in the trunk. If you don't have a trunk, I encourage you to keep a blanket in the car. Use the blanket to cover up those purchases. While they may be able to tell the blanket is covering something, if they can't see that new PlayStation sitting there, they're probably a lot less likely to break the window to get it. And the other thing to think about is, which is an offline security tip, but it comes from the online world, is what we are now affectionately calling porch pirates. There is a huge rash of folks that are going around and stealing Amazon packages or other online service delivery companies that you might be doing business with. They're stealing packages from your front porch. So really, if you're purchasing, you've got a lot of stuff arriving at a particular date, you may want to coordinate with a neighbor, stay home if you're able, or work with that delivery provider to maybe hold those packages at the distribution location where you can then pick them up securely. This is great advice for anybody. We all order a lot of stuff on Amazon. If it's a roll of toilet paper, I'm not really worried about somebody stealing it. But if it's a multi-$100 new piece of technology, I may take additional steps to ensure that it doesn't get stolen. Not only will it be very sad to not have that gift available for opening on the holiday day of celebration, but sometimes it can take weeks or months to dispute that, and you may not ultimately get your money or your goods in the end. So these are some really good tips for you guys to keep in mind as we navigate this holiday season. So let's talk smart devices for a second. I've heard anecdotally from a handful of my friends that the #1 gift request this year that they're hearing from their kids is, I want a smartwatch. I want smartwatches, I want Alexas, I want Google Home, maybe it's a smart VR device or something like that. We are seeing a huge increase in this. Also, there's some new smart childhood toys, some robots and some smart dolls and things like that. And while this is a very cool technology that I'm sure the kids are really excited about, we just need to think about a few things before we turn that stuff over. And the first thing we need to think about are the privacy settings. What is this device collecting for information? Where is that information going? Who has access to it? And this is especially important when it comes to children's smart devices, but also any smart device that might be in our homes, in intimate areas of our homes. Those Alexas, if they're in our bedrooms, can hear different things than if they're in our living rooms. And we just want to be very thoughtful about where we're putting this technology and really understand the privacy settings around it. By default, a lot of times those settings are set very low so that the manufacturer can have access to your data. So you may actually need to go in and turn on some things in order for it to really be private and secure. The other big thing I encourage people to do is mute the microphone when not in use. And what I mean by this is most smart speakers have a physical button that you can touch to mute the microphone. If the smart device is able to respond to its name when you call its name, that means that the microphone is on all the time. And it can hear things that you have said other than its name. So just be aware of that. Again, we have young children in the home. We don't necessarily want them interacting with that smart device without some guidance and supervision. So whenever it's not actually in use, I encourage you to mute the microphone. Some smart devices come with a password that you can set up. You should check to see if it has a password. Not all smart devices do, but if it does have a password, go ahead and set that password and make it a little bit difficult to guess. If you go with the default password that comes with the product, that can easily be found on the internet and then used by a bad person to commit fraud or other crime against you. I can't stress this enough. Be very thoughtful when getting that gift for a child if it's a technology-based gift. Really understand the consequences of what could happen if that technology was misused or abused. Double check that that vendor is reputable. We've seen some news stories in the last few weeks with some of these smart childhood toys that were very insecure, that actually allowed people to communicate directly with your child through the toy. So be very, very thoughtful about that. Slow down a little bit and really understand the gift that you're giving. Also, check to see if the manufacturer of this smart device has recently been hacked or has had a data breach. Nothing is impervious to being hacked. If it's on the internet, one day eventually it will be hacked. But it's just another way for you to take an extra cautious step to make sure that you're really selecting quality products from quality vendors and not accidentally introducing a risk to yourself or to your loved ones. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pause to see if we have any questions.
Ryan, since we are recording this webinar today, if people are watching the recording, is there a place where they can get a hold of you, Twitter, email, if they do have questions?
Absolutely. You can always feel free to tweet me, and that is on my intro slide. It's at CloutierSec. That's CLOUTIERSEC. And I'm always happy to answer. While we wait to see if anyone has a question, let me pose a few that I commonly get asked about this stuff. For example, today, as my plumber was here doing some service work, we were talking about his Ring doorbell that he recently purchased. And he was asking me, given the recent news stories about how that's being misused, if that was a good thing for him to have at home. And what we talked about was we have to make a decision about the benefit that technology gives us versus the risk that technology presents not only to ourselves, but to the people in our community. Since we are video surveilling the neighborhood, if you will, it's important to understand, do we have permission? Do we live across the street from a park where we might be inadvertently videotaping children playing at the park? That might be something we want to avoid. In the ultimate answer that I gave him is, it's a personal choice. However, on your way out of my house, you'll notice I don't own one. Another question that I get asked is, what do I do if I find myself being the victim of fraud? So I listened to your tips and I tried to do my best, but the bad guys still managed to get me and I got frauded. What do I do? What are my next steps? And what I encourage you to do is first contact your credit card or financial provider and freeze or suspend the accounts that might be experiencing fraud. Go ahead and contact the FTC, that's the Federal Trade Commission, and report that fraud to them. That helps them in their larger investigations and criminal investigations that they do into fraud. You may be able to get some assistance from local law enforcement. It's worth trying. But a lot of times, especially if you're in a smaller community, your local law enforcement may not have the necessary resources to deal with a digital crime that potentially occurred outside the borders of the United States. Another question I get asked is, my child is using a very popular app. Is there anything I can do to make that more secure? And the answer is yes. Go in and check those apps, and a lot of times this is true with games. Check the chat settings. If your child is under the age of 16, I generally advise parents to disable the chat feature. You're not really ever sure who's talking to your child online. It could be a peer or it could be an adult up to no good pretending to be a 14-year-old boy or girl. And so the easiest way to prevent that in the first place and reduce that risk is just disable those chat features. As a hard rule, I tell parents, if your child is under the age of 8, just automatically disable that stuff, because nobody has business at that point talking to your young child who maybe doesn't have the necessary discernment skills yet, as they're still very young.
Ryan, do you have tips as to how to have those conversations as a parent with your child when they want that chat feature on?
Yes. So the very first thing that I encourage all parents to do and start as early as you think is relevant, but definitely before you give them the technology, talk to them about treating the digital world and communication just like they would the physical world. So be thoughtful about what you say. Don't say mean things. Don't give away personal data. If somebody's asking where you live, don't tell them. If they continue to press, either discontinue talking to that person or make something up. My son, when he was online, as far as everyone in the world was concerned, he lived in Australia. And that's all he would say. He would never give out any street addresses. A lot of times he wouldn't use his real name unless those friends that he was playing with or were online also went to the school and he knew them in the physical world. It's very important to teach the children that the digital world has physical impacts, and a lot of the habits that we teach them in the physical world can actually be applied to the digital world. It's akin to the birds and bees talk. So sometimes it's not comfortable, but it is necessary and it is part of our kids growing up.
They're all great suggestions.
Hi, Ryan. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, this is Sarah. I have a question. It's along the same lines as the sort of birds and bees talk with kids and how that can be uncomfortable. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is that we really are the first generation of parents that are having to have online safety conversations with kids. So the internet, was maybe born or came to existence where we could access it in our late childhood years or teen years or young adult life. And so sometimes I think parents can get very overwhelmed with having to have these conversations with their kids. And sometimes I think we have to remember to give ourselves a little bit of grace on doing that exactly right the first time, because we really are the first generation of parents that have had to have stranger danger online.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think you're absolutely right. Don't worry about getting it perfect the first time. It's actually more important to make this an ongoing dialogue, because as the technology changes, so do the bad guys, their tactics, right? They change their tactics based on what we learn. And there's a new app coming out tomorrow that none of us can even imagine will be the new greatest thing. I remember the day I found out about TikTok. My son came, Dad, you got to see this thing. And I'm like, isn't it just like Snapchat? And he's like, no, it's totally different. Well, TikTok's now one of the fastest growing social media platforms out there. What I really like to focus on when I talk to the kids about the stranger danger is, yes, watch out for the creepy people, but also be careful what you take pictures of. Think about what's in the background of that picture. If you're in the kitchen making a TikTok video, make sure that the mortgage statement and the medication bottle aren't on the kitchen counter in the background as you're dancing around doing your funny business. Really, continue to have conversations, and age appropriate, right? What you're going to want to talk to your 8-year-old about when it comes to online behavior isn't equal to what you want to talk to your 13-year-old about when it comes to online behavior. Because as they get a little bit closer to teenagehood, we do need to think about digital birds and bees. And I mean that in the most literal sense. Online dating wasn't a thing when we were coming up, and now it is really the thing. And while the apps like Tinder and Grindr and OK and Wish and all these things are not supposed to be used by those under 18, those of us that live in reality realize the kids are on those apps as well, and so we need to be very aware of that. And if you've raised a teenager, you realize that directly telling them no usually results in the opposite outcome you were hoping for. So be a partner with them in this journey. Have the conversation frequently. I prefer a non-punitive approach myself. I'd rather, as a parent, I'd rather my child feel comfortable to tell me what's going on in the world than worry that, if I tell my dad, I'm going to get in trouble. But that's a personal parenting decision and how you want to communicate. But I would say start early, do it often, and it's okay to not get it perfect the first time. Matter of fact, you probably need to have this conversation multiple times.
Ryan, thank you for all the information today. You provided great thoughts on staying safe, both online and in our physical world, and how to have those conversations with other adults and children in our lives. As our time together comes to a conclusion, I would like to invite all of our participants and those watching this video later to consider attending the CPO clinic on Sunday, March 1st in the Wisconsin Dells. This is a free event, and we will be focusing on both cyber and data security. If you attend the clinic, you'll enjoy a light breakfast followed by a presentation from Ryan again. So if you found today helpful, you will find the clinic helpful as well. After a provided lunch, participants will engage in a tabletop activity about cyber security and data security within their districts. So if you do consider attending the event, we suggest bringing a leadership team from your district. Space is limited, so please sign up early. The WETL website is down in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, and the slides from today are in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, the bit.ly, so you can get to that registration link to sign up. But Ryan, thank you again for joining us today, and that's all we have. So everybody have a great
Thank you, everyone.